Well, hi everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Feeling Smarter. As always, I'm joined by Tim Miller. G'day, Tim. How are you?
Aaron, going pretty well, thank you. And yourself?
Very well, thank you. Well, today we're going to talk about transition to retirement income streams. It's a topic that I've covered recently in training, and we got a range of questions, a lot of it focused around the moving into retirement phase. And the fact that it throws up a few interesting things here, Tim, and I'd like to, I guess, kick off the conversation here about the importance of timing and the differences that we have between a retirement condition being met, also through permanent incapacity or a terminal medical condition, and how that compares through the condition of release with a nil cash-in condition of someone attaining age 65.
Yeah, look, I think it's a great conversation piece, and you know me, I like a soapbox, and whilst we don't have too much time for me to get too much onto my soapbox today, I still find it quite amazing that the government introduced the concept of transition to retirement in retirement. It's still the loosest term there is in superannuation. But yeah, I think it's a fascinating thing is that some of these events are obviously self-made, so from a condition of release point of view. Now, certainly total and permanent disablement and terminal illness are not self-made events, but retirement is most certainly, versus 65, which is obviously our ultimate condition of release from accessing point of view. So these other conditions, whilst there is some control over them, more to the point, there is some control about when you notify the trustees of the fund. And of course, if we remove our self-managed super fund hats for a moment, you have to reflect on if you're going to the trustee of an APRA fund, for example, they don't know that you've retired. They don't know that you've got a terminal illness or whatever. So they're relying on you. Whereas they do have your date of birth, so they do know when you turn 65. So it does create these very different scenarios, which then give us very different alternatives for planning when we've got members with a transition to retirement income stream.
Yeah, and you raised the really interesting point there in so far that we look to what that procedure is at an APRA fund. And of course, part of this issue with the transition to retirement in retirement phase problem is that it was a product difference. So we were going to need to sell down in an APRA fund in an accumulation, or a TRIS product, which is an accumulation product in its current form, and then move it into a retirement phase product. So we ended up with this real quandary where the government didn't want to end up in a situation where APRA funds were disadvantaged when you compare them to self-managed super funds. But it's, again, you look at what the requirements are as you stipulated. It's a process where the member needs to communicate to the trustee.
Yeah.
So, and that notice, unless you are 65, needs to not only satisfy the condition, but there needs to be express notification. And by express notification, it means the member needs to tell the trustee, and there needs to be documentation about that particular process.
Yeah, and I think that's a key point with a lot of the other stuff that I'm working through at the moment from an education piece it is that key documentation element, so there is record to show that there is a change in the circumstances in the fund, and the change in this instance is a member moving from accumulation to retirement. And so it's quite a big change from a super fund point of view, because it changes the tax nature of the income for the fund. So it may not necessarily have a big impact on the member themselves, but for the whole structure of the fund, it's pretty significant. So there is that need to document it. So therefore, we need to go through the process of, one, making that notice to the trustees, and then the trustees acknowledging that, which then obviously impacts the timing of when the fund moves into the retirement phase for taxation purposes.
Yeah, and regardless of which way we go, whether it's automatic or it's a decision that's made, ultimately we need to be proactive in the construct of whatever decision, because it's quite often we can start a pension as a transition to retirement income stream with an amount above the transfer balance cap. So therefore, if we don't make that change by way of commutation back to the transfer balance cap? Well, at 65, we have an automatic excess transfer balance position.
Yeah, that's right, and I think this is the thing, and we're in an interesting period of I guess superannuation, in the sense that we're moving away. We're moving away from members with multiple $1 million account balances. We're eventually going to get to much smaller balances, and balances below, say, the transfer balance cap as the norm. And so whilst we transition, to use that word there, whilst we transition through that period, we're going to have more people that are impacted by these automatic approaches, or these automatic transfers to retirement, versus the declaration-based model. But it's important to note, okay, well, what planning should we do? And of course, it's more about ensuring that as trustees and members, or as members and trustees, we're aware of the consequences, that if we're not pre-planning for these events, our retirement, and 65 being probably more critical, if we're not pre-planning, then there can be consequences from a transfer balance cap point of view. But alternatively, there can also be consequences that if we wanted to, for instance, sell an asset that potentially had a capital loss attached to it, or we wanted to realise that loss to be able to carry it forward, well, if we sell that once we've moved to retirement, and we're 100% in retirement, then we've lost the benefit of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess on that topic of traps, the other thing that sticks out with this is, we would have, if you have a TRIS, you always have a TRIS. It doesn't convert to an account-based pension unless you commute and repurchase. But one of the things that you want to be able to see in the documentation, and making sure your deed isn't prescriptive either, is that the two conditions around the 10% maximum falls away,
yep,
along with the ability to commute that pension as well. So that needs to be, I guess, addressed in the documents, but also making sure that your deed isn't too prescriptive, that hardwires a 10% maximum in there that might go, well, actually, I'm now stuck here until I actually make that deed change.
Yeah, correct, absolutely, and documentation is critical in all sorts of circumstances, and you would hope that most deeds that they don't hardwire you in there. And it was interesting, Aaron, I was about to catch you out there. I was about to say, listen, we haven't called them traps, transition to retirement allocated pensions, for a long time, but you were talking about the other sorts of traps, are traps for a TRIS, as opposed to a trap for a trap.
Yes, that's very, very well said. So, well, these are all the sort of topics that not only we cover in our education more broadly, but some of the technical issues that we address at our upcoming SMSF days right around Australia from the 13th to the 27th of March. We've got a fantastic turnout already. Some of our venues are close to selling out. So if you haven't registered already, jump onto our website, smartersmsf.com/SMSF day. Tim, great to catch up again. I will see you in Brizzy next week.
Yeah, can't wait to see you in the warmer weather of Brisbane.
Yes, probably a bit wetter too.
Possibly.
Bye for now.
See you all.